I was nobody special when the galaxy first noticed me. No royal blood, no legendary lineage, no destiny written in the stars. I was a logistics technician on Helio Station, a rotating ring of metal and light hanging above a dull yellow gas giant. My job was simple: keep the supply corridors flowing, make sure fuel shipments didn't drift off course, and file reports no one ever read. I lived in a compartment barely large enough to stretch my arms, ate recycled protein meals, and spent my off hours watching stars I would never visit. That was my life. Quiet, small, forgettable. And I was content with it. Content, at least, until the day the galaxy decided I was worth fighting over. It started with a malfunction. A freighter from the outer spiral arrived damaged, its hull burned black by weapons fire. I was assigned to assist with emergency docking. When the airlock opened, I saw her for the first time. Lyra Vale. She wasn't wearing royal silks or ceremonial armor, just a torn flight jacket and grease-stained gloves, but something about her presence bent the room around her. She moved with calm urgency, issuing orders in a steady voice that cut through the chaos. Later I learned she was a xenolinguistic specialist, hired by the freighter's crew to decode alien distress signals. That day, she helped save the ship. I helped stabilize the dock. We worked side by side for hours, barely speaking, but when it was over, she looked at me and smiled like we'd known each other for years. We talked that night in the station's observation lounge. She told me about lost civilizations, extinct species, and the strange beauty hidden in alien languages. I told her about supply routes, orbital mechanics, and how Helio Station smelled faintly of ozone and old coffee. It should have been boring. It wasn't. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, not as a cog in a machine, but as a person worth listening to. When her contract ended 2 weeks later, she stayed. Took a permanent post on the station. Moved into a compartment 3 doors down from mine. The galaxy shifted quietly around us unnoticed as we built something fragile and real. I didn't know she was already on the radar of empires. The galactic Concorde arrived without warning. One moment Helio Station was its usual hum of commerce. The next, the sky outside the viewport filled with ships, sleek, symmetrical vessels bearing the sigil of the ruling council. Alarms blared. Docking clamps locked. And my name appeared on every screen. I was summoned to the central chamber, escorted by soldiers in polished exocets. Lyra tried to follow, but they stopped her. I remember the look in her eyes, confusion edged with fear, and how my chest tightened as the doors sealed between us. Inside the chamber, they told me the truth. During a minor supply reroute months earlier, I had unknowingly prevented a cascade failure that would have collapsed 3 trade corridors and plunged half the inner systems into famine. My decision, made on instinct, had saved billions. The Concorde had analyzed every variable, every possible outcome. According to their models, I was a stabilizing anomaly, a human whose presence altered probabilities in beneficial ways. They called it fate-adjacent resonance. I called it nonsense. As a reward, they offered me everything: status, wealth, a seat among the stars. And then, with ceremonial gravity, they offered me a princess. She was brought in under a veil of light, Princess Aurelian of the Cyrene Dominion, heir to one of the oldest bloodlines in the galaxy. Her eyes shimmered like nebulae, her posture flawless, her expression serene and practiced. A political marriage, they said. A union that would stabilize alliances and anchor my anomaly within a controlled structure. I would be elevated beyond imagination. Humanity itself would gain favor and protection. All I had to do was accept. I thought of Lyra, her messy hair, her laughter echoing down narrow corridors, the way she corrected my pronunciation of alien phonemes with patient amusement. I thought of quiet nights watching stars together, hands brushing, neither of us brave enough to name what we were building. And I said no. The chamber erupted. Voices overlapped in disbelief. The princess studied me with new intensity, curiosity flickering behind her calm mask. The Concorde pressed harder, layering logic upon logic, destiny upon destiny. I listened politely, then repeated myself. I refused. Not because the princess wasn't extraordinary, but because I already loved someone else. That was when the galaxy stopped asking and started testing. Lyra was detained for her protection. I was escorted from Helio Station and taken aboard a Concorde vessel for further evaluation. They didn't torture me. They didn't threaten me outright. Instead, they showed me visions, possible futures where I accepted the offer.
Peace treaties signed.
Wars averted. Humanity thriving under imperial sponsorship. Then they showed me futures where I didn't. Fractured alliances. Rising tensions. Conflict. And in nearly every one, Lyra was gone. Lost to time. Erased by probability. They underestimated one thing. My stubbornness. I demanded to see her. After days of negotiations, they agreed, confident that love would make me compliant. Lyra was brought into a private chamber, unharmed but furious. She didn't ask about princesses or empires. She asked if I was okay. I told her everything. She listened in silence, then took my hands and said words I will never forget. Then choose me, she said, even if the galaxy burns. That was the moment my decision became irreversible. The Concorde exiled us instead of executing us. Perhaps they feared making a martyr of a statistical anomaly. Perhaps they hoped distance would break us. They stripped me of status, erased records, and dumped us on the edge of known space with a decommissioned exploration ship. No trade routes. No allies. Just stars and silence. The first years were hard. The ship was old, its systems unreliable. We scavenged derelicts, traded favors, and learned to survive beyond the safety of empires. Lyra mapped forgotten languages etched into asteroids and dead worlds. I kept the ship flying. We argued. We laughed. We nearly died, more than once. And through it all, we stayed together, not because it was easy, but because it was us. Something unexpected happened out there. Without imperial oversight, without rigid destiny models, we changed things. Small changes at first, rescuing stranded crews, mediating disputes between fringe colonies, sharing knowledge freely. Word spread of a ship crewed by two humans who refused to choose power over people. Probability bent around us again, but this time, it wasn't measured or controlled. It was alive. Decades passed. Empires rose and fell. The Cyrene Dominion collapsed under internal strife. The Concorde fractured into regional councils. Humanity, once a minor species, became known as unpredictable but principled. And somewhere along the way, stories began circulating about the man who refused a princess for one woman and the woman who stood at his side. We grew old together among the stars. No thrones, no crowns, just a shared life written across light years. When Lyra died, peacefully, on a quiet world with twin suns, I held her hand and thanked the universe for every borrowed moment.
I thought my story ended there.
I was wrong. The galaxy came back for me in whispers.
Scholars.
Diplomats. Children of worlds I'd helped long ago. They didn't offer me a princess this time. They offered me remembrance. They said my refusal had become a turning point, a proof that choice mattered more than fate, that love could outweigh probability. They asked what I wanted in return for telling my story. I looked at the stars and saw her smile in every one.
Nothing, I said.
Just remember her too. And so the galaxy did. I buried Lyra on a hill overlooking the inland sea, where the water reflected the twin suns like molten gold. The local settlers helped me raise a marker from polished stone. No titles, no dates, just her name etched in the flowing script of one of the extinct languages she loved. She would have liked that. No one owned her memory. It belonged to the stars. For a long time after that, I stayed. The ship sat idle in orbit, its systems humming patiently, as if it knew I wasn't ready to leave. Each morning, I walked the path to her resting place. Each night, I watched the sky and traced the constellations we'd named together. Private shapes no star map would ever record. Grief didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves. The absence of her voice in the cockpit, the second mug I still reached for, the half-finished translations on her console. I learned that love doesn't vanish when someone dies. It simply loses its place to land. The galaxy didn't rush me. That surprised me. Messages arrived slowly at first. Condolences, memories, recordings from people she had helped. A linguist on the rim sent a child's voice reciting a greeting in a dead tongue Lyra had revived. A freighter captain transmitted coordinates of a moon where she'd once negotiated peace between rival crews using nothing but patience and words. Even worlds that had never met her knew her name. She had become a quiet constant, threaded through the lives of strangers. Then came the delegates. Not fleets. Not soldiers. Individuals. A woman from the remnants of the Cyrene Dominion arrived alone, wearing no insignia. She stood before me and bowed, not as royalty, but as a citizen. "I was taught that you doomed us," she said. I was also taught not to question that lesson. Both were lies. She handed me a data crystal. Inside were historical projections, revised, corrected, stripped of imperial bias. In every accurate model, the same conclusion appeared. The galaxy didn't fracture because I refused the princess. It fractured because it had depended on control instead of trust. My choice hadn't caused chaos. It had exposed it. More visitors followed. Humans. Non-humans. Former enemies sharing the same table. They didn't ask me to rule. They didn't ask me to lead. They asked me to remember and to remind others that the galaxy had once tried to purchase a soul and failed. Years later, when my hands began to shake and my steps slowed, I returned to the ship. I wasn't running from the past. I was carrying it forward. I programmed the vessel on a slow, deliberate route, past the stations we'd saved, the worlds we'd touched, the empty spaces where no one ever stopped. I left recordings everywhere. Stories of ordinary people making impossible choices, of love surviving without permission, of a woman who believed language could heal what weapons could not. On my final journey, I visited the Concorde's old capital. What remained of it was quiet, its once gleaming halls converted into archives and schools. No one recognized me at first. That, too, felt right. In the central chamber, the same one where a princess had once stood before me, I placed a final record. Not a warning. Not a boast. A love story. I spoke of Lyra Vale, of Helios Station, of a life that could have been gilded and empty, and another that was difficult and full. I spoke of refusal, not as rebellion, but as devotion. When I finished, I left without ceremony. The galaxy did the rest. Long after my ship drifted into silence, long after my name blurred into myth, children learned a simple lesson in their first interstellar ethics course. That once, the galaxy offered a man a princess, power, and destiny. And he refused. Not out of arrogance, not out of fear, but because one woman had chosen him first. And in doing so, changed everything.